Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. It's time for another book haul. I've picked up quite a few books since my last book haul, including this huge box of vintage science fiction hardbacks that was given to me for free. So that's very exciting. We'll take a look at those in a minute. But first up, there are a few other books that I'd like to talk about first. So let's get stuck in. Now, the series which I'm most excited about in this haul is the Children of Time trilogy by Agent Tchaikovsky, which I have here. These three books. So, Children of Time is a very highly rated, critically acclaimed modern SF novel. Epic in scope, really interesting themes and ideas, so I've heard. It's been on my radar for quite a long time, and I finally got round to picking it up. And I did this because Agent Tchaikovsky, he came to give a talk to my local science fiction group earlier this month. So I thought it's about time I finally picked up some of his books. So I decided to get Children of Time and its two sequels. So I attended the talk. I met him. He's a very nice chap. It's a very interesting talk. He read an extract from his new novel, and I got him to sign these three books. So let's take a look at them. This is the first book, Children of Time. Can't wait to read this. This was published, I think, 2015 originally. Yeah. And here's the signature. He did a little illustration of a spider here because spiders feature quite heavily in the story, I believe. And the second book, which is Children of Ruin, in this case we've got a drawing of an octopus. And the third book, Children of Memory, this is a crow, I believe. So obviously those three animals each feature quite heavily in some way in each of those three novels. So can't wait to get stuck into those. I've just recently started a reread of the Three Body Problem trilogy. So once I've finished that, I'll move on to Children of Time, probably sometime later this year. So can't wait for that. Now, alongside those books, I have picked up a few other things recently. Most recently, just over the weekend, I was at a covered market with a second-hand bookstall, and they had a few vintage SF paperbacks there which grabbed my interest. But the one book I picked up there was Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke, which is an absolute classic. It's one of his most famous novels, and I've been meaning to pick this up for ages. I've been on the lookout for a nice vintage copy, but it's one of those books which I never seem to see out in the wild, like vintage copies. Until now, I found this lovely edition. This edition is from 1974. It's the pan paperback, and it's in very good condition. So, very pleased to have picked that up. It's high time that I read this classic. I've also picked up a couple of vintage short story collections because I've been meaning to read more sci-fi short stories. That's one of my ongoing projects. So I've picked up these two books online. They're both authors which I like. So the first one is Ursula K. Le Guin, The Wind's 12 Quarters, and I purposely sought out this American edition because I really like the illustration on the front. Isn't that beautiful? I've read a few Le Guin novels. I've enjoyed all of them. She was a very talented writer. I've not read much of her short stories. I have read The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, which is a very famous philosophical utopian story. And that is included in this collection. So, yeah, I can't wait to read that. This actually, I think this includes both science fiction and fantasy. And we've also got The Very Slow Time Machine by Ian Watson. I just discovered Ian Watson quite recently when I read Oracle earlier this year. I really enjoyed it. And I remember Alistair Reynolds saying that he's quite a talented short story writer. And he recommended his short story collections. And this one looks really intriguing. So, yeah, that's another one I can't wait to read. And we've got a modern SF novel here, Snakeskins by Tim Major. So Tim Major is another author who came to give a talk to our local science fiction group. So that's how I found out about this author. So I've got another signed copy here. I've heard that Tim Major is quite Wyndham-esque in his writing style. In fact, I'll just read a little bit of the blurb on the back just to give you an idea of what this is about. Snakeskins is an SF thriller examining the repercussions of rejuvenation and cloning on individual sense of identity and on wider society, with the tone of classic John Wyndham stories and the multi-strand storytelling style of modern TV series such as Channel 4's Humans. And I did enjoy Humans as well, so I think I probably will enjoy this. And those books are the only ones that I actually spent any money on, because all of the other books in this haul I got for free for various reasons. So I'm going to start off the rest of the haul with these two books, these two hardbacks. Fearless and Resilient. This is a duology in the Fractal series by Alan Stroud, and these were sent to me by the publisher Flame Tree Press. They just got in touch with me and asked me if I'd like to receive these books for free. So that's very kind of them, and I accepted. And I didn't realise they were going to send me these lovely hardbacks. I have read Alan Stroud before, actually. I read one of his short stories in the short story anthology. What is it called? Adventures in Space. I don't really know much about what this is about, but it appears to be some kind of epic space opera. And aesthetically, very pleasing. So, I do look forward to reading those. In fact, on the blurb of this book, Fearless, it's got Adrian Tchaikovsky, who says, fast-paced, gripping, hard SF with death in hard vacuum waiting at every turn. So it's got his seal of approval. I look forward to reading those. And I also got sent a couple of self-published books by the authors. So these are newly published books, self-published, as I say. The authors reached out to me and they asked if I'd like to receive a copy. So thank you very much to sending me these books. The first one is The Undying Apotheosis by Carl Lewis Astibadi. Lovely hardback edition here. Nice cover, nice colours. This is some kind of science fiction horror novel, I believe. It does have quite an intriguing premise, so I do look forward to reading that at some point. And then we've got a bit of a chunky one here. No Legacy So Rich, an account of the final calamity by W. Thomas Jones. So the author reached out to me and sent me this copy all the way from America, I think. And this is some kind of epic apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic story, I think. So thank you very much to W. Thomas Jones for sending me that copy. So let's move on to the main event of this haul, which is the box of science fiction hardbacks, which I got for free. So my friend Ian, who owns an online bookshop called Durdles Books, very kindly offered to give away a lot of his old sci-fi hardbacks. And these are all published by the Science Fiction Book Club. And they were all published, I think, around the 50s, 60s and 70s. So most of the books are from that period, or some of them are slightly older, the original texts. I'm going to recommend Durdles Books, his website, which specializes in fantasy, science fiction, hardbacks, first editions. Have a look. There's a lot of interesting books in his collection. I'll link it in the description down below. Now let's take a look at what we've got here. Let's see. First up, October the 1st is Too Late by Fred Hoyle. So, I've not heard of this one before. I have read Fred Hoyle before. I loved The Black Cloud. It's one of my favourite books. This has got quite an intriguing title. October the 1st is Too Late. Too late for what, I wonder? So, yeah, I'll definitely give that book a try. Trouble with Lichen, John Wyndham. I do have a copy of this already. This is the one I have. This is the paperback I have. I think this one's from the 80s. I'm not really one for keeping 2 copies or 2 editions of the same book, so I'm probably going to have to make a decision which one I want to keep, and the other one I'll give to charity. It's difficult to say. I do like the illustrations on the vintage ones, but this is quite a nice hardback edition, so I don't know. I'll have to make a decision on that. The Outward Urge. This is another Wyndham book. It's actually one he co-wrote with Lucas Parks. John Wyndham and Lucas Parks. The Outward Urge. There's no cover or anything, so I don't really know what this is about. Then we've got Cycle of Fire by Hal Clement. And this one is actually an ex-library book. It's dated as from the library as June 64 here, so it's pretty old. Again, I don't really know what that's about. Another Hal Clement, Needle. The thing with the Science Fiction Book Club editions is they don't actually have much in the way of blurb. If you look at the covers, it just has some information on the Science Fiction Book Club, how to join, and other titles in their collection. And these are all published in the 60s because it's pre-decimal currency. So I have no idea what that's about. Obviously, I could Google it, but I've grouped these authors together where I can. So we've got a couple of Frederick Poles here. Slave Ship and Plague of Pythons. I've not read Frederick Pole before, so let me know if you've read any of these titles, if you can recommend them. A Case of Conscience by James Blish. Now, this one is quite high up in my TBR. This is quite a well-known classic. In fact, quite recently I picked up a paperback. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. I picked this one up in Hay on Wye. This is a Penguin vintage paperback, and I think in this case I'll probably keep the paperback because it's in very nice condition. Let's So I'll probably give away the hardback. Nine Tomorrows by Isaac Asimov. I'm actually very pleased to pick this up. This is a short story collection, and it includes one of Asimov's most famous stories, The Last Question. I've not read any short stories by Asimov before. I've read a few of his novels, but not his short stories, so that's a great find, I think. We've got some Brian Aldiss here. Hot House, well-known classic. This is another duplicated copy. This is another one I picked up quite recently, this paperback. I definitely prefer the artwork on the paperback. The science fiction book club editions, the covers tend to be a bit plain, but this paperback is not in not so great condition, you can see from the spine here, so I may just keep the hardback. And what else we got? Greybeard. This is in excellent condition. I don't know this one. It's a novel, I think, by Brian Aldiss. 3 short story collections by Brian Aldiss. The Canopy of Time, The Saliva Tree, and The Heirs of Earth. And then we've got a bunch of Clifford Simak books here. You can never go wrong with Clifford Simak, so I'm quite pleased to have found these. Time is the Simplest Thing. Aliens for Neighbours, which is a short story collection. Way Station, which is an absolute classic. Hugo Award winner. Again, I already have this one, so I'm going to have to decide which one to keep. Here it is. This is my paperback, vintage Pan paperback from the 60s. This is the hardback. I think in this case I'll probably keep the paperback. All Flesh is Grass. I don't know this one. The Werewolf Principle, which I have heard of. I've heard this one is good, but I don't know what it's about. And this is probably the one I'm most pleased with. City, which is one of his most famous novels, I think. And it's high up in my TBR, so very pleased to have picked up that. And then we've got The Anything Box by Zena Henderson, another short story collection, and this one, I actually bought this very edition just recently in Hay on Wye. This is the edition I bought in Hay on Wye. I spent £10 on this, and this is the one I've just picked up just recently for free, and this one is in better condition. So I'm going to have to give this one away now. The Doors of His Face, The Lamps of His Mouth and Other Stories by Roger Zelazny. I do like Roger Zelazny, everything I've read by him so far. I haven't read any of his short stories yet, so those will be interesting. Then we've got some Edmund Cooper, another writer that I haven't read before. The 10th Planet, The Overman Culture, and Jupiter Laughs, and Other Stories. And now I've got an absolute classic, A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter Miller. This one has been in my TBR for a while, and now I finally have a copy, a lovely vintage hardback of this apocalyptic classic. What else we got? Last Men in London by Olaf Stapleton. This is a very old text, I think. Yeah, 1932. What else have we got? Mind Swap by Robert Sheckley. I have heard some good things about this book, but it is absolutely knackered, as you can see. I'm not sure if it's even worth keeping, which is a shame. But then you look inside and the text is okay. It's quite readable. So maybe I will keep it. I don't know. Nova by Samuel R. Delany. This is a classic, actually. It's good to get some more Delany in my collection. I do need to read more of his work. And we've got some Paul Anderson, The Star Fox, Shield, Time and Stars. Again, I don't know anything about these books, and there's no blurb to read. But I do need to read some more classic SF writers. We've got a couple of Bob Shaws here, so these are great finds. Orbitsville and The Two Timers. I do look forward to reading more Bob Shaw. Rite of Passage by Alexei Panshin. I don't know this one, but Ian told me that it's worth reading, so I'll give it a try. Venus Plus X by Theodore Sturgeon. Joyous Invasions by Theodore Sturgeon. I think this one is a short story collection. Now we've got some John Brunner, The Telepathist, No Future in It, The Stone That Never Came Down, and Time Scoop. So, John Brunner, that's another writer I'm not at all familiar with. If you can recommend any of those books, please let me know. Another Frederick Pohl here, Drunkard's Walk. Nearly done. Eric Frank Russell, which is a writer I don't know. Wasp. And 5 stars. Then we've got The Unexpected Dimension by Algis Budrys. This is a short story collection. I don't know this writer. The Mind Parasites by Colin Wilson. I've heard a few things about Colin Wilson recently, so I'm quite intrigued to read this. We've got a nice hardback edition of Inverted World by Christopher Priest. It's in very good condition. So let's just compare that to my paperback. This is my paperback edition. It's a vintage pan paperback. Definitely prefer the illustration in this one, but I do really like this hardback as well, so I'm a bit torn which one I should keep. I'm going to have to think about that. And what else we got? 3 more books. Oh, we've got Robert Heinlein, Revolt in 2100. To be honest, I'm not sure if I want to keep this because I've read Heinlein before and I just really couldn't get on with his writing style. So I don't think this will be my cup of tea, but let me know if you've read this and if it's worth reading, if I should keep it. All the Colours of Darkness by Lloyd Biggle Jr. A writer I don't know. And finally, Larry Niven, A Gift from Earth. And there we have it. So that completes the science fiction book club editions. That completes the book haul. I've got a whole load of books here to get through. I'm going to have to reorganize my library because I'm running out of shelf space. But again, thank you so much to Ian from Durdles Books for giving me all of these wonderful hardbacks. So, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.